Good evening, everyone. So I'll ask you please to join us with a couple of things. One, how many of you have electronic devices in either your purse or your pocket? I know there's 2 or 3 of you out there do. Please, they're turned off, otherwise the PA system will pick them up. Other than that, I would ask you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance and to the republic which stands, one nation, under indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Parker, would you take the roll, please?
Atchison.
Here.
Byrd. Here. DeMott.
Here.
Pinter. Here.
Just for the record, let it be known that Slice notified us several weeks ago that she would be out of town on vacation, and the council approved her absence.
Here.
Council, you have before you the minutes of the meeting. If we could have a motion, Ms. Scully.
The council approved the minutes of the meeting of July 9th, 20.
Mr. Canberra?
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Before we start our presentation of employee awards, so none of those of you here, Chief Hall, can you give us our weekend activities?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, as you know, and as many of you know, we experienced a fairly significant fire at the Westbury Apartments located at 115th and Pecos. From the fire, the building involved 69 units. All of those units sustained some degree of damage, certainly irreparable. The building continues to remain evacuated, as well as a building that may have sustained some water runoff damage. The building is secured and is presently under the control of the city as we done our initial investigation to determine the cause and origin. The investigation with 20 agents and the scenes and would normally take several weeks or months utilizing normal laboratory processes. Several residents and witnesses have been interviewed, and those interviews will continue through the remainder of the week. We sustained 2 fatalities from the fire. There was one resident this afternoon was unaccounted for. That has been found safe, so we now have accounted for all residents and guests. Our emergency preparedness coordinator today met with the Red Cross, Adams County officials, the property owner representative, Disaster Assistance Center, that will assist in touch with all the different systems to their needs. Would be housing, food, clothing, so that's a big job that we're taking with the Disaster Assistance Center. Presently, the property has shut off because the domestic water to the entire project is managed through a single meter. So the property owner is looking to segregate the building that sustained the fire, and then remaining buildings that are occupiable so the residents can have water. A couple of that address is there was a rumor floating around that we have estimated that our initial flow for somewhere between 2 and 2.5 hours was 10 gallons per minute. We have water in that area, and it was an issue. That particular complex was built in 1974. At that time, there were no system requirements for a complex like that. There were fire alarm systems required. There was no sprinkler system, or the building through the municipal code does have inside each of the units. And we know that some of those were operating because we heard them. but there's not much in the way of common areas for that building. And our last fire inspection was conducted in February of this year, and the building was given a clean bill of health from the fire code standpoint. So that's an initial report. The investigation is likely to occur over the next 5 to 6 days, and then as significant things develop, then they will be released to the public through our normal news media press releases and or briefings to the council. So I will entertain any questions you might have.
Okay, Ms. Pinter.
Yeah, thank you so much. I had passed a note to the mayor, so he knew I had a question. Thank you to our firefighters and all the mutual aid that came in from our jurisdictions as well. I know it was quite an endeavor, and I hope all of our fire personnel are well. Can you report if we had any injuries or any concerns with our fire personnel?
I am pleased to report that we sustained injuries to our personnel, and from a standpoint, they're doing very well. We have a system in place that allows them to sort of be assessed, and that assessment has come back very positive. We were assisted by 5 different agencies. I'm still looking for a final count on the actual number of fire engines. I know there were 6 aerial apparatus there.
Wow.
Going water. I wouldn't want to leave here tonight without commending our Public Works and Utilities Department. We called in their staff. With a big fire like that, we're always concerned about the water resources and as much information as we can get from that, because we're flowing a lot of water, and that means it's drawing on the system pretty heavily. But they reported into us and worked with us and allowed us to really do a great job in controlling that fire. And then finally, I would comment on the actions of several of the Westminster police officers. There's no doubt in my mind that our Westminster police officers truly actually saved lives that night by knocking on doors and evacuating residents. When our personnel first arrived shortly after 2 a.m., there were people jumping out of second and third and they needed help, and some of the residents were trying to help them. Children were being lowered down. We were laddering the buildings. In the first several minutes, there was no fire suppression activity, because the first tactical responsibility is always life safety and rescue. We were assisted throughout that evening by the Westminster Police Department and the officers on scene in managing the residents and certainly supporting them as they were looking for some type of safe haven and that type of thing. So no doubt that many lives were saved by their actions as we initiated some of the rescue of the residents as well.
Thank you. Thank you for the update. And that's really good to hear. One last question, and I'm sure we're hearing this in the public as well. With the Disaster Assistance Center, where can people send support to the families, or what might the needs be for the families who, with all that, is it 10,000 gallons a minute? That's a lot of water damage in addition to the smoke damage. Where can we send support to the people?
That's a part of Greg Moser's activities with that Disaster Assistance Center. He has coordinated with the Red Cross where they can accept donations, financial donations, goods donations, as we would typically be accustomed to donating to them. He is actually working on another phase of that, to where he needs some space to store things. And one of the things he's working on is an opportunity for people to donate household goods, furniture, beds, couches, tables. Most, if not all, of those materials are gone. I mean, many of them, much of it's gone because it's waterlogged, destroyed by fire. There's going to be a few of the units that maybe the fire itself didn't get to, but the smoke, the water as it flows down through the building and that type of thing would have ruined a lot of that. So he's looking to try to identify some type of physical location to where those donations can be donated to and then distributed to the families. The property owners, I should say, are working very diligently to relocate the residents. I don't know what the status of all of them are. The property owners own 2 other apartment complexes in Westminster with vacancies, and they own 3 apartment complexes just outside the city boundaries with vacancies. So they've been working over the last 20 years to relocate some of them. The Red Cross did hand out cards to many of the residents that had some type of cash value on it that would ensure they had lodging for 2 or 3 days as these different systems and processes will work to obtain housing and lodging for these residents.
Will that information just be on the city's website where people can make donations?
Yeah, I think that, we worked with the city manager's office today to find what that information is, and it'll probably be going out tomorrow or as soon as things get finalized.
Thanks, Chief.
Any other questions of the chief at this time?
Oh, I was just advised that information's on the website now.
Thank you.
7:20 through Facebook and Twitter.
Oh, 7:20 p.m. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Okay. Chief, thanks, and thank for all the.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
David? Yeah. Next item on the agenda will be some employee service award presentation. We'll start. We have a number of employees tonight who will be receiving 20-year recognitions of service, and then we have several who will be receiving 25. We'll be doing those, and Councilor DeMott will be handling our 20-year pins.
Can I get Andy Alt-Williams and who guest she has to come up? This is always one of the fun tasks that council gets to do. And 20 years ago, I was probably causing trouble with Westminster Mall, I imagine, so. City put it in good hands. So, do you want to go ahead and introduce your guest for us?
I have my husband of 32 years, Chris Williams, and then our son, Josh.
Thank you both for letting her to us for 20 years. So, Andy was hired in 1998 as a prototype of two. Former Parks, Recs, and Library Director Bill Waltoniak and Patty Wright, the city open space supervisor. Angie's job was later reclassified as secretary in 2005. She currently is the executive assistant to Jason King and the director of Parks and Recreation and Library. Angie has received a citywide Spirit Award in recognition of her customer service and usage of the city's Access Westminster program. She was also External Customer Service Champion Award winner. Angie enjoys spending time with her family and has been married to her husband for 32 years. Chris has been in the city for 34 years, the last 20 which he worked in the IT department. So both city employees for a long time. Huh? Yeah, together they have 3 children and 1 son-in-law. Their son Joshua works in the software as a software support for Einstein Bagel Corporate. Their daughter Jessica is a part-time healthcare management student who manages local Subway franchises. And their other daughter, Brianna, is a supervisor of support for Maripath Quest Diagnostics Pathology Department. Brianna's husband, Tim, is a COO for the local technology company. And he has 2 granddogs, Sadie, 12-year-old Australian Shepherd, and Knox, a 3-year-old Alaskan Malamute. And he has enjoyed traveling to many places, including Mexico, Ireland, and most states, with his pastimes relaxing and napping. That sounds like a good pastime. Thank you very much for your service to the city.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next, could I have Christopher E. Johnson and any of his guests come up? How you doing? Good. You want to go ahead and introduce your gang to us?
This is my wife Lisa and our son Martin and our youngest son Cameron.
Excellent, welcome. So Christopher has been with the city since July of 1998 when he started at Legacy Ridge Golf Courses as the assistant superintendent. After 15 years of being on the golf course, Chris has been blessed with the challenged by other opportunities in Parks, Recs, and Library. Chris has worked in the city park and recreation and has been the parks and golf superintendent for about 3 years. Over his career, Chris has been chosen to attend a golf industry-sponsored leadership academy, served a short stint on the Rocky Mountain Golf Course Superintendent Board of Directors, collaborated on multiple teams and action-recognized projects, and has been honored with a Spirit Award. Chris and his wife, Lisa, have 2 tremendous young sons, 12 and 14. He spends most of his free time chasing them around in their pursuits. You know what that's like? And also have a 30-year-old daughter who lives with her family. Chris enjoys boating, camping, and spending time with his family and friends. We have your pen and your thing. Excellent. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
One, two, three.
Thank you again. Congratulations. Did Betty Lasasso show up? Well, she was another 20-year recipient, so we thank her for her service. And then we have Missy Sago. How you doing? Would you go ahead and introduce your guests to us?
This is my husband Tom and my sons Charlie and Brody.
Welcome.
My parents are in the back. They refuse to come up.
I think parents get to do what they
I
want,
know,
right? Yeah. So Missy has been a 911 dispatcher for 28 years and is celebrating 20 years with the City of Westminster. Prior to coming to Westminster, she was a dispatcher, trainer, and acting supervisor at the Lakewood Police Department for 8 years. Prior to starting her dispatch career, she was location secretary, switchboard operator, assistant funeral director for Oleander Mortuary, and a switchboard operator and secretary for a car dealership. Busy, busy. I guess that lends to your job of multitasking.
Yes.
Makes sense why you're good at what you do. Missy was hired by the Westminster as a dispatch in June of 1998. She was released from training in a record 3 months and immediately went to the night shift. Missy worked night shift as a dispatcher for most of her time until her promotion to supervisor in July 2006. Since becoming a supervisor, Missy headed up dispatch training program for 11 and a half years, including the creation of the 4 to 6 week dispatch academy for new hires. She created a dispatch SWAT team to assist our SWAT officers with dispatch support in the field during incidents. Missy brought Smart 911 and Code Red to our agency as part of Jefferson County sponsored program. She's currently the current Association of Public Communications Officers Officials, so that's a mouthful.
It's a mouthful.
Certified Emergency Medical Dispatch Coordinator, providing training and oversight of emergency medical dispatch programs. Missy assisted in creating our communication centered standard operating guide manual that we use to guide our dispatchers in their daily duties. During her time at Westminster, she has been involved in many critical incidents and received many awards. During her first year at Westminster, she was awarded the Dispatch Employee of the Month, dispatched her first Westminster officer-involved shooting, and took the 911 call and dispatched fire to her first Westminster homicide-suicide call, which is still used as a training call today. Missy grew up in Arvada and went to Pomona High School, where as a graduating senior, she was accepted to the Colorado Institute of Art. She attended Red Rocks Community College, majoring in interior design. Her father, what don't you do? Her father is a retired law enforcement officer. She is married to Tom, who is a Jefferson County deputy, explains the uniform. And together they have 2 wild, crazy boys, Charlie and Brody. They keep her running constantly as they are in lots of sports, and they have 1 monster dog named Samson. I would add too, anybody who's got the opportunity to meet Missy and go through our Citizen Academy, which you have an opportunity coming up to do, very well-informed lady who could teach you a lot and has to deal with some of the worst in our city. So I appreciate personally what she does for us. So here is your plaque and your pin.
Thank you.
And thank you for your service. Trying to get away.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you again, please.
Thanks again to those who came tonight that were here to attend our 20-year. But the next one is a little bit different. Not only do you get to recognize the employees, but somebody's going to go home with something extra in their purse or their pocket, depending upon who gets the award and who gets the check. And we know this young lady as Bonnie instead of Yvonne. So Bonnie Leuenberger, would you come up and bring your family? And if Mom and Dad's the audience, I would make you come up. Hi.
I got the whole crew.
Good. Bring them on.
Except my son and his family.
Hi.
That's Reagan.
Come here, Reagan. Stand right here, okay? Can you hold this? Hold it. Bonnie, tell us who you're with you.
This is my daughter and her and Lindsay. This is Kendall and Avery.
And Reagan has got the check.
And don't forget Dad. Oh, and my husband Bert. I'm a little nervous.
Is that Grandpa down there? Is that Grandpa?
It's Papa.
Is that Papa? Okay, all right. Bonnie Leuenberger was hired in 1993 working as a part-time receptionist, secretary, in community development, and until she was hired as a full-time secretary in 1999. She has previously worked in engineering and economic development and now provides technical support for the Community Development Block Grant Program and South Westminster Revitalization Programs. Bonnie enjoys spending time with her family, especially her granddaughters Avery, Kendall, Reagan, and Teresa.
And Trisea.
Sorry, Teresa. She's been married 36 years this October, has a daughter whose family lives in Thornton, and a son whose family lives in Parker. Bonnie's other interests include quilting, genealogy, spending time away from the mountains, in the mountains, not away from them, and her pets. What do you got, Bonnie? Pets?
Cats, yeah.
Cats, okay. So for each of them, we appreciate very much the fact that they've loaned us Bonnie for this 25 years, and hopefully we get her for a few more. So Bonnie, congratulations.
Thank you.
And can I borrow that? Thank you. For every year of service that at the 25 year, we give them $100 for every year of service. So Bonnie's got the check for now.
Yes. Hey, Rex, can I hold you?
Stand right
So you can be in the picture?
here.
Come here.
Go ahead.
Oh, you got it? Okay.
You got them all?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, don't move. Got it? Okay. Thanks, Bonnie.
Thank you.
Mr. Johnson, not Chris. Mr. Lance Johnson, would you bring your family down? How you doing, bud? Good. Hi, guys. How are you doing? Good. All right, Lance, your turn. You know all of them?
Some days I'll claim them, yes.
Oh, okay.
I have my wife Lynn, my daughter Brett, our future daughter-in-law Laura, my son Greg, and my son Kyle.
By the way, he raised as a raising golfer professional, right? Mm-hmm. That's what I thought. Well, Lance Johnson started with the City of Westminster within the Parks, Recs, and Libraries Department as golf maintenance supervisor during the construction and grow-in of Legacy Ridge in 1993. Was promoted to golf superintendent in 1996. In 98, he oversaw the construction, grow-in, and opening of Walnut Creek Golf Preserve. From 98 to 2013, Lance oversaw maintenance operations for both golf courses, and in 2013, he was promoted to Recs Facility Superintendent, overseeing all golf course operations, as well as 4 Recs centers. In 2015, Lance was promoted to his current position of Parks and Golf Manager. Lance became a certified golf superintendent through the Golf Course Superintendents Association of America in 2004. He is currently serving a 1-year term on the National Best Management Practice Resource Task Group, or GCSAA, as the president of the 640-member Rocky Mountain Golf Superintendents Association in 2009. as president for the Rocky Mountain Environmental Golf Institute in 5 years from 2009 to 2013. Lance has been married to his wife Lynn for
long time.
how many years? I got it down here, Lynn. Do you remember how long?
Gosh, 33.
33. She got it right. And Lance? Good luck getting out the door.
You're going to give that to me.
Well, I'm going to hand it to you now, but I know who's going to walk out the door. Lance and Lynn and I have known each other for a long time, so we know who's going to end up with the check. And if it was my wife here, she'd end up with it too.
Luckily not that one.
Congratulations to all of you, and thank you very much for allowing me to That fence gets in the way.
Yeah, go behind.
Right here.
Too big.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Thanks, guys. Congratulations. Lynn, have you heard anything yet?
I'm going to DC tomorrow. I'll know when I don't have to climb over.
Let me know.
I will.
Okay. Thank you. Take care. Now this next young lady, Joy Talarico Hunt, come on down, has one of those kind of positions where everybody in the world is envious of what she does. They can't wait to get her job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm a blonde.
So Joy, introduce your family.
Yes, this is my mother, Margie.
Hi.
My husband, Joe.
Hi, Joe. So Joy was first hired to work for the city in Westminster as a part-time code enforcement officer. And she was the secretary in 1993 for the community development. In 1994, the function moved to the police department. Joy became a part-time code enforcement officer and subsequently moved to the full-time. Joy continued to expand her knowledge and build her skills and made her an excellent selection for supervisor of the unit when she was promoted in 2003. Joy currently supervises 7 employees. Her units are responsible for enforcing code violations as well as eradicating graffiti throughout Westminster. Joy has been the recipient of 7 Teams in Action awards. In addition to her work with the city, Joy has been an active member of the Colorado Association of Code Enforcement Officials for the past 25 years and has achieved advanced certification for the organization. She has also obtained certification as a zoning inspector. Joy has 2 adult married daughters. She enjoys her 6 grandbabies, 2 humans, and 1 dog. 4 dogs.
4 dogs.
I wonder how I got to 6. She and her husband are avid country dancers and enjoy weekends at their cabin hiking and snowshoeing. And again, for Ms. Talarico Hunt, a little stipend of $2,500. And thank you for your 25 years of service. And Mom, Jim, thank you for loaning her to us. Congratulations.
Show that.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
This part is going to be just a little bit different, so once we let the crowd get cut out, I'll explain what we're going to do. All right, the next part we're going to go into is our citizen communication. Now, normally this is a part where we take on any item for up to 5 minutes, on any subject you want to come forward. We'll go through the same process each person. When you start by announcing who you are, the little green light comes on. When you've got 1 minute left, it turns yellow, and when your time is up, it turns red. Typically, if we have a public hearing scheduled, we ask you not to come to speak to anything that's going to be conducted as a part of the public hearing. The public hearing item for tonight is the city's 2019-2020 budget. So if you have comments on that or questions regarding that, wait until we get to the budget. Any other item is asked to come at this time. Now we know there's a number of people here who are asking to talk about the ordinance that's being passed on item 10C tonight, or may be passed depending on how the vote turns out. Your time is now at the citizen communication because that ordinance hearing is not a public hearing. So along with everyone else, when your name is called, we'd ask you to come up. Even though I have your name, please, for the record, just put it on the tape as to who you are. You do not have to give us your address. We already have it here. And then your time will start with that time. So first one up, Ms. Swanson, if you would, please.
Good evening. Pam Swanson, Superintendent of Schools for Westminster Public Schools. And I'm joined by Ryan McCoy, our board president. He's with me here tonight. Believe it or not, school is about to start. And in less than 2 weeks, we have a big back-to-school barbecue. We're inviting the community. We did this for the first time last year. We thought we'd get 50 to 500 people. We got 3,000. And so this year, we marketed it a lot. And we're going to give away about 3,500 backpacks. We've appreciated the police department and the city helping us and getting ready for that. And I brought you some swag and an invitation. So that's why I'm here tonight, and I appreciate the time. And I don't have to go yellow or red. That's all I got.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Swanson. Margaret Martinez.
My name is Margaret Martinez. I was here at this meeting 4 weeks ago to register a complaint, and I'm happy to say that I'm here tonight to say that my complaint has been resolved. It had to do with the damage that was caused to our housing area, our common areas in our housing area by the fiber installation that Comcast was doing. We had contacted the designated person at Comcast and had gotten no progress at all. And so I want to thank, I'll name the people that I know of that helped. Cody Erb, David Pateni, David Loosman, and the city clerk's office for providing the documentation we requested. And so we've received full reimbursement for our damages. So we're very happy, and I want to say thank you to all who helped and to the City Council for providing this forum for citizen communication to help people like us when we have no place to go. We really appreciate it, and on behalf of my Highland Greens East Homeowners Association, hearty thank you to the city.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. James Duffy. Yours is on the budget, correct? Okay, we'll come back to you. Mr. William McKerney.
Bill Carney, Hewitt Hahn, 104th at Sheridan. In 1955 and 56, my father-in-law, Dean Hahn, and his cousin, Bill Hewitt, bought 750 acres in Westminster. In 1970, at the city's request, we annexed into Westminster, even though our address was Broomfield. In 1973, the city asked us to donate the right-of-way for the Big Dry Creek and Scepter Sewer. In the recorded utility easement states the connection for our property shall be of sufficient size to accommodate any proposed development, and we are not to bear any expenses. Also in 1973, a like agreement was made for Section 3 of the sewer line, recorded in Adams County. All easements for lateral lines connecting to Big Dry or for Waverly Acres, Highland Hills, Wandering View, and other neighborhoods were provided by us at no charge with similar language for future connections and expenses. In the 1980s and 90s, with expansion of the city road system along Sheridan, west of 104th and 113th, we offered compromised prices for the right-of-way as staff offered support for higher density land uses, which they continually are not willing to honor. We are also being told the pending comp plan study will further reduce those densities because of sewer issues. With each new draft of the comp plan, more and more previous land use agreements and assurances are whittled away. In 1992, the city entered into a golf course development agreement with our family for Legacy Ridge. Our family donated 86 acres of land for the back 9 holes of the golf course, driving range, maintenance facility, and portion of the clubhouse. The city agreed to a number of land uses called PDP land, including single-family, attached, multifamily, and commercial. The city administration allowed changes to the PDP land to create a better golf course community. We're zoned for almost 1,100 multifamily units along Sheridan from 106th to 110th, but replaced it with luxurious single-family housing, selling now from $600,000 to over $1.5 million. The city manager and staff then were agreeable to making land use changes without comp plan amendments or rezoning. We were granted over 1,100 water and sewer taps, but have used just 600. We didn't create the sewer problem. The agreement clearly states the city will at all times make available to the owner of the PDP lands sufficient water and sewer taps to permit the construction of the maximum zone density on the PDP land, without regard to any phased development, controlled growth, or other restrictions which may directly or indirectly limit the number of water or sewer taps made available at any time. The golf course agreement, as well as all the easements and other agreements for the past 45 years, reflect the long history of cooperation by our family, but in the past 10 years the city has taken a more adversarial position in efforts to deny our previous agreements. In 2013, I appeared before City Council to express concerns over comp plan density changes from office to multifamily at the Promenade, but was silenced by the city attorney. I met with Don Tripp for 2 hours in May 2016, going over a long list of all these agreements. He assured me staff was on top of it. There was sufficient water and sewer capacity to honor the agreements. Now that the city projects of the Promenade have connected to the sewer system, there is a sudden sewer emergency that crept up on staff. There is no emergency, but more of a conscientious effort by the city to develop their property interests to the detriment of the private property owners. The city sold the land it had an interest along US 36 at half price for multifamily and waived the bond indentures. For the multifamily development next to the Westin, the city gave $4.1 million subsidy and waived the obligation to build the office building required from previous subsidies. He also gave $15 million subsidy to the developer at Westminster Mall for some apartments and an oversized convenience store. What amount of subsidy is the city offering us? You should offer buy some of our smaller properties you render unsaleable by this moratorium. Since you're not willing to honor your end of the bargain, the city should suspend use of the golf course on the land we gave you. That will get the community involved too. The city should allow all projects to continue processing while breakneck construction of sufficient sewer capacity to comply with our agreements. Declaring an emergency may grant additional powers to the very people who screwed this up. Instead of the attorney conjuring abstract legal positions and telling council not to communicate with me, the city manager should be imploring the city council that he will personally set about finding ways and allocating resources to honor these agreements and obligations, which were made with an honorable family who have contributed significantly to the growth and expansion of modern Westminster. Thank you, and I'd be glad to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Carden. Next up is Mr. Jeff Wills.
Mayor, councilors, thank you very much for your time this evening. My name is Jeff Willis. I'm the president and owner of Berkeley Homes. Berkeley Homes is a mid-sized, privately owned home builder here in the metro area. We have been building homes in Denver for over 35 years. We pride ourselves in providing the best new homes within each price point we build in. We have been very active in Westminster for the past few years. I believe we have a very good working relationship with staff across multiple departments, and I hope they would say the same about us. We recently completed our Schoenberg Greens community at 73rd and Sheridan. We're in the middle of our new Connections neighborhood, which is just a stone's throw south of us here. And we're also in the middle of the review process on our latest project at 88th and Lowell, which is taking over a defunct townhome project that went under it during the recession. We have also submitted a proposed comp plan amendment for what I think is actually our most exciting new community within the city of Westminster. It's a community located at the southwest corner of 104th and Sheridan. This is the project I would like to briefly discuss this evening because it is impacted by the proposed the sewer moratorium. Our proposed project is comprised of 3 different parcels owned by 3 different landowners. Each of these parcels has been in some state of development review over the last decade with various home builders in various different projects. City staff has indicated their desire for all 3 parcels to be planned, reviewed, and developed as one cohesive neighborhood. We agreed this would be optimal, an optimal way to achieve a terrific new neighborhood by combining all 3 parcels. We have a very unique moment in time where we were able to put all 3 parcels under contract at one time and have submitted to the city a diverse yet very cohesive plan. Our proposal includes a wide array of housing from attainable townhomes and duplexes to higher-end patio homes, a broad mix of different housing types. All indications after several pre-application meetings and 1 round of formal comments on our submitted comp plan amendment are that this project is a project that city staff would strongly support. Of course, there are numerous details to work out, and we still need to go through a public approval process. But I believe the foundation of a high-quality, mixed-price neighborhood has already been set. We recognize the sewer capacity situation the city is facing and fully understand the importance of it. However, we are also confident that this is a short-term rather than a long-term situation, and ultimately the capacity issues will be resolved. Our project is at least 18 to 24 months away from full approval. Once it approved, it would likely take at least another year before our infrastructure and our first home is completed and put in place and would be a burden on the sewer system. Additionally, it would take probably 5 to 6 years from now from full build-out. We ask that council consider not setting a bright line test with PDP and ODP submittals being the criteria for what projects are allowed to move forward through the review process. This would allow our review process to go forward while the city is simultaneously reviewing potential solutions for the sewer capacity. We recognize the uncertainty and risk we may have with proceeding with our comp plan amendment given the sewer situation. However, we are concerned that if we have to stop for 12 months, we will not be able to keep all of our contracts in place and the project will not move forward as a cohesive project. And the city will be back reviewing each property independent rather than as a well-planned cohesive community. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Willis. To Mike Byrne.
For the record, I'm Mike Byrne, been a resident of Westminster since about '78, so almost as long as Herb, I think, barely. I live at 2391 Ranch Reserve Bridge, Westminster, Colorado. Long-time developer here in the city. I've done a number of projects from office buildings to mixed-use development and Ranch Reserve subdivision and so on. And I'm involved in the project that Jeff just told you about. As many of you know, I've been working on this property for seems like 4 or 5 years now with various builders, and I kind of represent the different landowners and have worked through the entitlement process. So this particular project, we've aligned all the stars. We got a great builder in Berkeley Homes, and we were able to add to the Amberwood parcel, which is Edward Rubens and the Holtzcall family, who longtime Westminster people, you'll recognize that name. And now a little bit of about 25 acres of the Hewitt-Hahn property. We've put it all together, and we've got a great builder, and we've been working on this for a long time, but we're just kind of working through the process. So we're asking as a council, when you consider this moratorium, to look at our project as one that, you know, is in process, has been in process. We've worked on it for a long time, and by the time we get through the end of the process, it'll be a couple of years, 2 or 3 years. And, you know, we've worked closely with Dave Downing and Dave Losman Engineering, and, you know, we know that you're working on coming up with a solution for the sewer problem. And as a longtime resident, I think it's important you send a message to the development community that Westminster's not going out of business from 92nd North. That's a moratorium. That's what you, when you hear, and you don't want to send that message. You know, I care about Westminster, and I think you want to say that business, we still want to develop properties north of 92nd. It's a big part of our city, and I think it's important that you do this moratorium in a soft win-win process. You need time, and I understand that. You need time to get your sewer study done and figure out how to make Big Dry Creek have the proper capacities. But just do it in a positive way and send that communication to the development community, and don't just draw a line in the sand and say we're going to talk to you for 12 months. So I know legally you have to do certain things and you have to do it right, but it's been pretty clear that you really don't make a commitment on a sewer tap until you get a building permit. So we as developers realize that we have some risk and we have to go through the process, but unless I'm missing something, I don't think you're saying that you can't fix this problem. You're just saying you need a little bit of time to work through it and figure it out. So just let us work through our process for the next 2 years while you're figuring it out, and we're not asking you to commit to giving us sewer taps up front. We're asking you to let us work through the process, create a really good residential development that has attainable housing for the citizens of Westminster, and at the appropriate time, you'll be able to work with us on the sewer taps. And a single-family residence development just uses, a few taps each month if they're doing well. So it's not like a big apartment project that needs them all at once. So I just ask you to, when you look at our project, that particular project, and the bigger picture, for somebody who cares about Westminster, just think of the positive ways to present this sewer. I'm not sure I like the word moratorium, but sewer slowdown. So thank you. And by the way, thanks to, was it Vance and Chris? I use those 36 parcels of land out there that are on those 2 golf courses. I survey those every once in a while, and they're in great shape. So thank you for keeping that golf course in order.
Thank you.
Mr. Dan Pratt.
I never signed up for, I'm not sure why my name, as far as you just calling people on the roll?
Calling whoever signed up to speak.
Oh, sorry.
If you didn't mean to, that's fine.
Didn't have my glasses on.
Mr. Charlie McKay.
Good evening. My name is Charlie McKay, Church Ranch, and I'd like to talk to you about the sewer moratorium. Kind of to go way back, Church Ranch has been there since 1869. I started working with the city in 1979. I was involved with the interchange, and some of you may know and some don't know that it was put out for competition. And our group was selected, and we took on building the interchange and 2.1 miles of road, sewer, water, infrastructure, street lights, bridges, box culverts, and so forth. Our share of that interchange cost and roadway cost was $3.56 million. We annexed to the city in 1989 and opened up the interchange in 1990. The moratorium will definitely hurt the final development of Church Ranch. As you know, most developers, the money comes at the end, not at the beginning, as you well know, because of the front end loading and costs. I think that this is significant because in 1974, when we granted you the easement to come all the way through our property, it specifically says, and I made copies and I'll just hand them to you when we're done. It specifically says on item 6, I'm watching my time,
This easement is conditional upon the subject to the following agreements between Westminster and church and their heirs, personal representatives, successors, grantees, assigns. Church shall have the right to tap said sewer line in the northeast corner of section 24 or whatever, afford sewer service to all improvements which may be constructed upon approximately 125 acres of ground, more or less owned by church in the northwest corner of section 14, township 2 south, range 69.
It specifically points out that that was our agreement. We gave up the land at a token price, and the agreement was you would serve it. And then further agreements going all the way through says that you'll serve it. There's some other comments that are available to us for enforcement, but I'll leave those out for tonight in the interest of your time, and just like to pass this out. And I hope you'll consider this when you make your decision and allow us to keep going. Again, it's been a long, long ride. I always tell everybody when I first got this Church Ranch project approved, I was 100 pounds lighter and had jet black hair. So that's it. I beat the time. Thank you for letting me talk.
Thank you, sir. I think I'm reading the hand right, so if I mispronounce it, please forgive me. Doretta Stroberg.
I just thought that, and I'm going to pass it tonight. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Mr. Jim Vastbinder.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I am here also to speak on the proposed ordinance in your agenda item 10C. As you may be aware, Etkin Johnson Group, which I'm an employee and representative and a partner in, I have been blessed with development in the city of Westminster with Charlie McKay and Greg Bradbury at Church Ranch over the last 20 plus years. To date, we've developed 2 multi-story office buildings, 3 single-story buildings, and 3 hotels. We have the capability on that property to build roughly another 300,000 square feet of commercial properties. Obviously, a moratorium will put the process in a holding pattern during a period of time which we're experiencing unprecedented growth, both in locally, but in particular in the 36 corridor. In addition to that, and city staff is just on the cusp of starting major improvements as it relates to future development, not the least of which is the office buildings that have recently been constructed. The 2 concerns that we have specifically are, as pointed out in the memorandum that attaches to the ordinance, this problem has been known since 2012. We're now 6 years into a known problem with really no specific solution at hand, other than we know that we have a problem jointly. Obviously, we're part of this this situation, and we're scratching our heads about what would another year's moratorium add to a solution of a problem which has been known for 6 years, other than another year. Secondly, we're a little bit confused about, even if there was a solution to this problem today, are there funds available both on a local level and federal level to solve the problem? And is it a solution that can happen incrementally, or does it have to happen for the entire basin? I think by pushing this problem down the road, if you will, with a moratorium, concerns us in that maybe there's no real impetus for solutions that we all could jointly come together with. Thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the list of those who have signed up. Now, if there's someone who didn't get a chance to sign up before the sheets were picked up or have comments, I would ask you to come forward at this time and tell us who you are, and for the record, since you didn't sign up, you'll need to give us your address as well. Go ahead, sir.
Good afternoon. Sorry, I think I signed up in the wrong sheet. So
okay.
Thank you. Anyway, thank you for taking me. A couple of things I would like to mention.
Tell us who you are for the record, though, sir.
Pardon me?
Tell us who you are. Tell us your name.
Oh, I'm sorry. Eric Cormack from Westminster, Delaware Street. That's it. 80021. Sorry about that. Okay. They have a lot of word passed out, but I think I'm an invisible man who is here. I'm a taxpayer. I expected a taxpayer reward for me. I worked only, paid only taxes for 55 years, so I would have $5,500 award. So, nothing. Okay, so the other thing is I would like to mention, I showed you that before. That's Colorado State of spending, and goes up the three or four charity issue in it: education, healthcare, and human services. And they take four times more than the regular job what they should do. So it is here, and that one what the city should do, and that is goes straight, but that goes sky high. Now it looks to me there will be a crash, financial crash, and I am observing around the world, and there is a big problem, even in California, Mexico. Mexico, the gangs taking over, they killed about 100 candidates for political, how do you call it, political position. And looks to me Mexico will be ruled by gang, M13, whatever they name. California, it doesn't look like a golden state anymore. It looks like a junkie state. I looked at a film on the street. It looks terrible. Like I would go down South America. It's poverty. People on the street. They have each day collecting 100 needles because people are shooting up themselves on the street. They fight there. They sleep there. They look very terrible. So it is San Francisco. So what's the problem? I think it goes back to that thing here. If we cut out the charity, which is not a government job, just doing their own job, then the city and the state would survive. Now, when I talk about charity, somebody talks about social justice. Now, it is not charity. It is a forced charity which created a problem in Venezuela, in Mexico, in other socialist states. And and it goes like that. The government promised, oh, we will help you, like my country. Okay, farmers, you get a big land from the rich guy and we give it to you for charity. Oh, yeah. And 2 years later, government says, no, we take back the property and you will work on the property with the very low wages. So it was very bad. So, with other words, I just would like to remind you, when you spend on charity, it will ruin the city, will ruin the country, will ruin the state, and the United States included. We are not exception. We are going very high, as you see, and that's a crash line. There's no way we could avoid it. So I just thought I would bring up to your attention. I have 42 seconds more. All right. I'm just not happy with the bicycle thing, and I just put a map there. It's a real thing. It's the bicycle PP will collapse with the cars. It is made for it. and I don't know how many money to spend on it. They should pitch in, they use the road, they should pay the fee for it, not just the car drivers. Well, I think that's my opinion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
I give you these things were a problem.
This time, do we have anyone else who wants to come forward at the public comment period for a period of up to 5 minutes on any item other than that public hearing we have coming up on the city budget? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Tripp, if you would, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would like to make a couple comments if I could, please. I want to first of all thank the employees. Most of them are gone right now, but I want to recognize them for their service to the city. We do this every month or so, and it's really a highlight, I think, of the time we all get to sit up here. I want to welcome all the attendees tonight, and I want to tell you how much we appreciate you being here and providing your comments and feedback. We've got some folks in this room that have a lot of history with development and the history of this city, and I just want you to know we really appreciate you, and thank you for being here this evening. And finally, concerning the fire this weekend, there were a couple of comments I just wanted to make to follow up, and thank Chief Hall for his comments. He was very thorough in recognizing those that participated. I just want to say how much appreciation and admiration I have for all the city employees over the course of the weekend and their involvement in this. Their work is remarkable, and I know they share my sentiment and condolences to the families of the two folks that perished in that fire. It's a horrific thing for all involved, and I want to just recognize those employees for their efforts and what they did this weekend and do to follow up through this. And finally, I think the only one that maybe wasn't mentioned is Adams 12 Schools. They opened up Silver Hills Middle School in the middle of the night, and our partners, our regional partners in all governments, all of our school districts, Westminster's here tonight, they serve us similarly in this regard. We just appreciate all their support. I believe that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tripp. Council, on what we've already discussed or other items, Mr. Canberra.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too also would like to welcome everybody here today. Thank you for your comments and feedback. I want to echo Mr. Tripp's comments around the fire this weekend, and really thank our Chief Hall, our police department, our firefighters, and our public works department for how well and how quickly you handle the situation. And it's not just those three departments. We had our city manager at 3:30 in the morning texting us, letting us know what was going on. There were emails going around. So this was truly a citywide effort to make sure that we were able to respond quickly to handle the situation. I know there's a lot of work still to be done, hence why there's, members of different agencies trying to figure out what happened. But right now I think our biggest priority is to figure out how can we help the victims of the fire and make sure that we continue to be as responsive. And thank you for our communications department for making sure that we can actively be updating our website with information. I will keep my comments in regards to the moratorium for when we discuss it, but I do want to thank everybody for being here today and sharing your thoughts and feedback with us. This is not an easy decision or time for this council, and we have a lot of questions and things to ask here shortly, but I want to make sure that that we take your feedback very seriously, because this is definitely a very serious issue. We pride ourselves in especially the work, at least during the time I've been on council and before that, we've done to become better partners of our development community, and we want to make sure that we continue that. So thank you all for being here today, and I know we'll be discussing that here shortly.
Ms. Scully.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I want to thank everyone also who is here tonight. It's always great to see a good turnout. I know a lot of purposes in this community tonight, and I am excited to listen to what is said. I've already taken what has been said very seriously, and I'm taking notes and thinking through things. So thank you for your input. I wanted to express how impressed I am every month when we honor the people who have worked with our city for such a very long time. It says so much about a community and a business and a city that has people who stay long term, 20, 25 years, 30 years. Recently, we even had a 40-year celebration. This is tremendous, and it speaks to our great city. And then I wanted to thank the first responders. This weekend was very tragic. It was very difficult to work through it on Sunday morning, and I very much appreciate Mr. Tripp and reaching out to us and helping us understand the gravity of the situation and helping us to work through it as well. And our prayers go to all of those who were involved, and may they quickly be able to turn their lives back to where they were. Tonight we're going to vote on the boards and commissions, and boards and commissions are always very special to me. This is where our community really comes alive and people can volunteer and be a part of our city. And tonight we are going to vote in some great people who have stepped up to serve our city, and I'm just very thankful to their commitment. This weekend we had the Latino Festival down at the TOD, and what a turnout. Tremendous for our city. It was very exciting to be a part of it and to be a part of the celebration. Want to thank everyone who came to the event, participated in the event, and shared that vision with us. And Mrs. Martinez, I would like to thank you particularly. It's not very often that we get to hear how things resolved, and that means a lot. I see it a lot in and around Westminster, but it's always nice to hear from the people who were affected of how something resolved. So thank you for sharing that with us tonight.
Ms. Berg.
So thank you to everybody who came here tonight. I know that the large topic tonight will be the moratorium, and I'll also reserve my comments for that when we discuss that item on the agenda. I did want to speak to our first responders and thank them so much for their work this weekend. We had been keeping abreast of things that were going on. City Manager Don was messaging us, but then we also had communications directly from the fire department several times after the tragedy had occurred, just letting us know what was going on. And I think our citizens don't realize what our first responders do. Our fire department goes and they put out fires, but the police officers, if you had listened, had the opportunity to hear our fire chief speak, our police officers went and knocked on every door to make sure every person was awakened and evacuated out of their respective apartments. They put themselves at risk, just as our firefighters did, and also putting themselves out there and doing the work to make sure that every single person was accounted for. And that, to me, speaks to the quality of the community that we live in, that we care not just about putting the fire out and attending to what we see as the damage at hand, but also tracking down every single person, making sure they're accounted for, and then collaborating with the Red Cross to make sure that people have a place to live, and as you heard earlier, that they will also have clothing and furniture. So I hope, to the best of everyone's ability, that you will contribute to the extent that you can to help these families. But also, I really did want to take the time to thank our first responders and all of city staff that work so hard to really step up for people facing what is probably, for most of them, one of their darkest hours. So thank you for everything you've done.
Ms. Pinter.
Thank you so much. Like my colleagues, I can't help but comment on what happened with the fire. It was really wonderful to have such a comprehensive response from staff and to have those press releases, not just going out to the community, but coming to council, as I did get questions throughout the evening to try to make sure that while it was a tragic situation, that everyone's needs were being met as best we could. And it was really great. We got to send a special thank you to Adams 12 for opening their building on such short notice. That really is tremendous to know that people had a safe place to be. We had a very busy week, and just to give a brief update, the Latino Festival was this weekend, and I had the privilege of opening it with Councilor DeMott, and I know my fellow colleagues were there intermittently throughout the day participating in the different activities. Just a really great, vibrant activity and activation at our train station, and a great way to meet your neighbors and hear some really good music. I understand that Councilor DeMott did some wrestling as well. So, okay, I did not. We also had the Adams County Economic Development Site Selector Summit, which is a really neat and new summit that they've put on the past couple of years. And I know we have comparable programs out of Jeffco, but really being mindful, and it is mindful for some of the conversations we're having this evening about how we are encouraging and investing in economic development in our community and being a place where people want to spend their time and spend their money. I know that I attended with most of my colleagues at one event or another at the Site Selector, and I think we've got a really good group who are committed to making sure that we're putting our best foot forward. So thank you as we head forward into discussing the events of the evening.
Mr. DeMott?
First, I'd say I know you all join me in praying for both the first responders and victims of the fire. And hopefully, like Councilor Byrd said, you'll go and donate, because just in the blink of an eye, that's pretty sobering that you could lose everything you have to something like that. And I know we're the type of community that wants to step up for our neighbors, so I hope you do join us in supporting that. A couple events that weren't brought up this weekend that are, I think, great events. Yesterday was the Scott Wagner 3rd Annual Softball Tournament. It's in honor of Scott Wagner, who was an officer here who we lost to cancer 3 years ago. They gave out 9 different scholarships, the family that keeps that running in the PD. So thank you to the PD that ran that event. It was a great event to be out with our community. Lastly, if you haven't already heard, I believe it's the 4th Annual Craft Brew Fest coming up this Saturday. There's 45 different regional breweries that will participate. It's one of my favorite events if you're a beer drinker like myself. So hopefully we see many of you out there. I know that our Parks Department put a lot of effort in making that a really good regional event.
Okay. There being no other comments, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, which is a group of routine matters to be acted on with a single motion and vote. We have already determined through the pre-meeting that no council member has asked for any item to be removed from the consent agenda, so at this point I'll open it up to the floor. Ms. Scully.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the City Council adopt the consent agenda, items 8A through 8G.
Do we have a second? Second. I have a motion and a second. This will be a vote by your lights. As soon as I can get it started, there we go. And the motion carries on a 6-0 vote. Next item on the agenda is the resolution number 20, appointing members to the boards and commissions to fill vacancies. Ms. Scully.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to adopt resolution number 20, appointing members and alternate members to the boards and commissions to fill vacancies on the Environmental Advisory Board, the Human Services Board, the Inclusivity Board, and the Planning Commission, respectfully.
Ms. DeCamera.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any comments by council? Mr. DeMott.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment why I will be voting no on this item. Unfortunately, we have the task of voting just once with everybody in one group, and my colleagues and I did not see eye to eye on who we were placing. I would have liked a different mindset on a couple of these boards, so I will be voting no.
Okay. Any other comments from council? This is a roll call vote. Ms. Parker. Yes.
Byrd.
Yes.
DeCambra.
Yes.
DeMott.
No.
Pinter.
Yes.
Scully.
Yes.
Okay. The motion carries on a 5-1 vote. Next item up is the public hearing on. Okay. Will be the next item that we will address will be the public meeting on the proposed 2019-2020 budget. But in the meantime, we're going to take a short pause for cause, and we'll be back in about 5 minutes. So don't run away. Don't go start meetings. Okay, everyone, if we could get back. All right, the next item up on our agenda is a public hearing regarding the 2019-2020 budget and to receive citizen comments. At this point, I will declare the public hearing open. If we have anyone who has a wish or desire to come to talk to the council about asking for money or anything to do with the budget. Mr. Duffy, I believe I still have you signed up.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and Manager Tripp. In 2015, Dr. Swanson convened a cross-agency group, the Westminster Children's Initiative, to study collaborative ways to support our youth. This group, which includes city and county agencies, nonprofits, and district personnel, wants to ensure each child has the resources and support to be successful. And it was determined that out-of-school programming was of the utmost importance for our students and residents. After all, our youth spend approximately 1/3 of their time in school and 2/3 of their time in the community at large. Through introductions facilitated by the Adams County Youth Initiative, Dr. Swanson and I entered into conversations with the Boys and Girls Club of Metro Denver, exploring what it would take to open a club in the district. Westminster Public Schools firmly committed to making a club a reality, providing program space in Hidden Lake High School, an initial investment of $100,000 for startup costs, dedicating $300,000 for annual operating expenses, and all club members will be provided dinner through our nutrition program. We are pleased that our Board of Education and the Boys and Girls Club Board both unanimously supported the proposal, and we are excited to announce the opening this fall of the first Boys and Girls Club in Westminster. Here to give you a background on Boys and Girls Club is their CEO, Erin Cortez.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. At Boys and Girls Clubs, we've been in the kid business for nearly 60 years. We're experts when it comes to partnering with schools and with families to be there for kids on the first day of kindergarten all the way until they graduate from high school. We currently serve more than 10,000 kids in the community. When you invest in the clubs, you see positive results in kids, in schools, and in the community. In fact, for every $1 that's invested in Boys and Girls Clubs, we show $10 in economic benefit to the community. This includes ensuring kids are prepared for post-secondary education or going into jobs, or entering the workforce and ensuring less dependence on government and human services, including keeping kids out of the criminal justice system. We've done incredible work in communities, and today we ask the City of Westminster to join us in our partnership, along with Westminster Public Schools, to provide a club for all children and teens. The best examples of our work are illustrated in Lakewood, Commerce City, Denver, the City of Brighton, currently contributing and helping to underwrite the cost of their Boys and Girls Club. This new club at Hidden Lake is our first of the bigger vision of making sure every child in Westminster has access to quality after-school programming and enrichment activities. Along with the school district, we hope that this is our first club with more to come in the future. Today, we respectfully ask the city to consider our request of supporting the new Westminster Boys and Girls Club by including us in the city budget in the amount of $50,000. For further review, I have brought full proposals, which I will give to the city clerk. And it is now my pleasure to introduce Deja, who is a club member at our Cope Boys and Girls Club.
I have been attending the Boys and Girls Club for 9 years now. I am 18 years old, so that's been half of my life. And I dedicate everything that I am and who I am going to be to the Boys and Girls Club. Truly, it is an organization like no other. I've been a part of a lot of different programs, a lot of different school-based sites, a lot of different organizations that help youth, but it is Boys and Girls Club that continuously makes the change in a student's life. Whether it's at home with your family, whether it's creating that family atmosphere with the Boys and Girls Club. They are there to support you through everything, whether it's high school, middle school, elementary school, a lot of them, and beyond. I know a lot of alumni still give back. We currently, have just done an event with my Boys and Girls Club, and to watch the support and watch who you've grown up with and just watch that family atmosphere that the Boys and Girls Club creates is something that you truly have to experience yourself. And I think it would be such a great aspect of Westminster that we've been able to have in Denver, in Brighton, in Lakewood, in Commerce City, because I know I'm connected with everybody at those sites, and pretty much it's a whole family atmosphere throughout the organization.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just to make sure everyone understands, these requests were coming in, staff is cataloging these, getting the background information, and when we go to our budget retreat later this year, all these items will be reviewed at that point as possible funding opportunities. Any other one else who has any comments or requests at this point for the 2019-2020 budget?
Mike Byrne, 2391 Ranch Reserve Ridge, Westminster, Colorado. I'm wearing my hat as president of the Country Club Village Association. It's a 20-acre development I developed starting in about 2005 at the corner of 120th and Federal. We funded the developer portion of Federal Parkway improvements back in 2005, 2006. I've sent the council and staff emails regarding this, and the council has funded for a couple of years now some of the funds for that final bit of Federal Parkway improvements from 120th up to Country Club Highlands residential development, 120 something. And the final bit of those construction funds, I believe the project is being designed now. You funded that, and the final bit of the construction money is in the 2019 budget, and I ask on behalf of all the owners of Country Club Village to that you keep that in the budget so that we can get that built. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none for tonight. There will be additional opportunities as we go forward into the budget process. For tonight, I'll declare that the public comment period is closed. Council, up on the items that we are then taking action on. The first one up will be resolution number 21. Ms. Pinter.
Yes, I move to adopt resolution number 21 that authorizes the following expenditures for the program implementation as part of the Great Outdoors Colorado Westy Power Poder Grant for $169,725 to Growing Home, Inc., $183,000 to the Butterfly Pavilion, and $332,115 with various vendors to enhance and expand existing city programs to comply with the grant application and agreement.
Ms. Byrd.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any comments by council?
I just would like to comment that this Power Putter program has been really instrumental in the lives of so many youth. You can see some of the videos about it on our city's website, and when you talk to the instructors and then the teenagers who get a chance to participate, it's really a great opportunity to have GoCo support and to provide this opportunity and pass it forward to the youth in our community.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote. Ms. Parker?
Byrd.
Yes.
DeCambra.
Yes.
DeMont.
Yes.
Pinter.
Yes.
Scully.
Yes.
Atchison.
Yes. Motion carries on a 6-0 vote. The next item up will be Councilor's Bill number 27. It's an emergency ordinance to enact a 12-month moratorium on the acceptance of new development applications. Mr. Tripp, before we open this up, I'm going to turn it to you to have a staff update on this, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are going to have some staff lead this. We have a team from multiple departments that are working on this issue, and they've prepared some background for you to explain where we are today and the work that they've been doing recently, and provide some other information related to the proposed ordinance this evening. Department heads, Max Kirschbaum from Public Works and Utilities, Dave Downing, and Jenny Grafton from Economic Development. Dave represents Community Development, and they will tag team this, and we're really proud of the work that they're doing to very aggressively pursue this issue.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's up to you.
Don, if I could introduce also the Mayor and councilors. The intent of the materials presented for your consideration this evening are to act as a follow-up to our executive session discussion last Monday night, July 16th, regarding the Big Dry Creek Interceptor capacity constraints. We, at the direction of council, prepared for your consideration an emergency ordinance, which would enact a 12-month moratorium on the acceptance of new development applications for projects that increase sewer demand in the Big Dry Creek Interceptor system. As Mr. Tripp has indicated, we do have a staff presentation for you with our community development, economic development, and public works and utility directors, and who are here to present an overview for your consideration and to inform your consideration of this proposed moratorium. The presentation that they will initiate momentarily will begin with an issue statement, a map of the moratorium area, a discussion of development impacts and technical issues, as well as a description of progress and next steps that we are engaging in.
All right. Thank you, Councilor and Mayor and members of Council. So we're going to start at a very high level and framing this in terms of an issue statement. If I can get it to advance here, Dave. There you go. All right. So again, I'm Jenny Grafton, acting Director of Economic Development for this time while John Hall is out. Is it still not catching? There we go. Okay. So for this evening, to begin framing this conversation, want to start by stating in the issue statement that the major improvements of the Big Dry Creek Interceptor sewer, those improvements need to come online sooner than had originally been anticipated. And in a little while, I'll turn this over to Max Kirschbaum, the Director of Public Works, to go into greater detail about that. But it is important to note that this is a product of both, actually all three, the age, the condition, and the capacity of that Big Dry Creek system. So most of it was constructed in the 1970s. And for those of you who have ever studied our population growth here in Westminster, between 1970 and 1980 was when we really had the most rapid growth, going from about 7,000 to roughly 50,000 people. So that begins to help inform the sizing and the condition that the system is currently in. In the time period since from 2000 to where we are today, we only grew by roughly another 12,000 people. So it's important to keep that longer term picture in mind. The issue has been raised, however, that we are entering a period of time where we feel that the risk to the system is reaching an unacceptable level, and therefore new applications for development could potentially exceed that capacity and therefore warrant further study. The purpose of being here tonight is to ask for an immediate 12-month moratorium necessary to allow staff the time to do a comprehensive study of the issues and develop a plan to move forward. So the map that's appearing before you now was also included as part of the packet. This is also present on the city's website to help answer questions about the boundaries of the moratorium area. It is north of 92nd Avenue. So it is also highlighted on this map what areas are not included, but it is approximately 2/3 of the land area of the city. It does not include redevelopment areas at the southern part of the city, the Westminster Station area, Harris Park, South Westminster, the downtown. Likewise, it does not include the area around the Orchard and what we refer to as the North I-25 area that includes the hospital. That is because those are served by different sewer interceptors. And as I'm sure Max will go into greater detail in describing, that is largely a function of topography and the fact that sewer needs to flow downhill. So there's very little we could do to adjust those boundaries.
Dave Downing, Director of Community Development. wanted to say a few words about development impacts of the proposal tonight. In addition to those areas that Jenny just mentioned, in the Little Dry Creek Interceptor Basin and along the Huron Street corridor, where the proposed moratorium would not be applicable. Certainly, there are projects that have already attained their building permits, and we are not at all talking about stopping those projects. Those projects can proceed as planned through the full development, construction, and this proposed action tonight does not apply at all. And there are a number, as you might imagine, there are a number of projects that fall in that category of already having a building permit issued. So this does not impact those projects at all. New applications for building permits are subject to the proposed moratorium. They will be evaluated at the time. I probably misstated that. Not so much the moratorium, but projects, new building permits that we have received prior to the proposed date of noon tomorrow would be evaluated at the time that we are ready to issue a building permit to check for our ability to be able to provide all of our services, including sewer service, of course. As a matter of fairness, we think that those proposed projects that are applying for building permits should be evaluated on a first-come, first-served basis. Certainly there's probably a multitude of ways that we could look at an order, but it seems as though the fairest way to do this is to have just first in gets first consideration for available service.
And I'm Max Kirschbaum, Director of Public Works and Utilities for the city. First, I think it would be helpful to do a little bit of a review that goes back in time to the 2011-2012 time period in which the city considered all of its sanitary sewer systems, both in the Little Dry Creek Interceptor Sewer Basin as well as the Big Dry Creek Interceptor Sewer Basin. And both were evaluated and studied in terms of age, condition, and their capacity for continued development within those basins. A decision was made at that time that while both would eventually have capacity issues that needed to be dealt with, that the age and condition issues in the Little Dry Creek Interceptor Sewer Basin were more severe. As a result, a comprehensive multi-year investment program, capital investment program, CIP, was set into motion for the Little Dry Creek Interceptor. To date, from then to now, we have spent over $26 million on improvements with that Little Dry Creek Interceptor sewer. The last of the bid packages for that work you approved very recently. That last stage has been awarded, and that work will be done either late 2019 or early 2020. So at the same time, it was understood that the Big Dry Creek Interceptor sewer, just because of the ability to spend CIP program dollars, would hold and would continue to be studied and monitored going forward from that time. So in 2012, we conducted with one of our partner consultants, HDR, a study of the Big Dry Creek Interceptor sewer that modeled the sewer system, as well as established a report that we have used since that date in 2012. In 2015, that study was updated. The modeling was reviewed and updated, and again, with a an approach to continue to monitor and assess all activity within the Big Dry Creek Basin. At that time, we also established then a multi-year CIP profile that would have begun in 2019 with pre-design activities and would have culminated with CIP construction spending in the years 2022 and 2023. We had estimated roughly 50% of the construction funding in each of those 2 years for a total of about $30 million investment to occur at that time. In 2018, it was again time to refresh that report and the modeling that HDR, who by the way has been our partner on both all of our sewer infrastructure, including the plant itself. The modeling that we conducted beginning earlier this year indicated that the cumulative projects that have occurred between 2012 and today were already posing a risk that we would exceed an acceptable risk for a sanitary sewer overflow, called an SSO, which is obviously a reportable incident with the state. During this period also, it should be noted that from about the end of the downturn in the economy, that we have increased flows in the Big Dry Creek Interceptor by 40%, very significant. So it was clear that our project and schedule to improve the Big Dry Creek Interceptor needed to be accelerated from the plan we had originally set forth with spending from 2019 through 2023, which would have had construction completion typically following by 2025 or 2026. So if we go to the next slide. So as I said, we've been working on developing an accelerated project timeline, including the pre-design activities that are already getting underway. Also notably, a week ago, we presented and made recommendations to you in a study session for water and sewer rate recommendations that would support an accelerated timeline. We have set out to hire again HDR as our partner firm to continue to work through at least through the pre-design phase. That contract is on your agenda also tonight in item 10F. You've already approved a portion of it where we reallocated some funding to cover that initial not to exceed cost with HDR, but the contract itself to do the pre-design activity, which we estimate to take 6 to 9 months from the time that we sign that contract, is before you also this evening. There are a variety of both operational and physical mitigating actions that we're also looking at and or already pursuing to help us through this period of time until we have a solution that we can present and then an execution plan to complete that work. Some of those include reviewing parcel by parcel the comp plan, and that activity will continue as we do, as you know, the revision to the comp plan that is also now underway. It has now almost become ordinary and routine that we continue to work the modeling, the hydraulic modeling with HR, who has been our partner in this effort for the last 6 years since 2012. We will continue to look for solutions and construction timeframes that could allow some development to pursue, to continue. And as Dave said, some of those there is a group of projects that either will or would not be subject to the moratorium that you're considering this evening. Slide. Another one of the initiatives that we've already undertaken at our Northwest Water Treatment Facility on a daily basis, we do discharge water there as a regular part of water production. We have altered the release of those flows on a daily basis to ensure that they occur at the least peak periods during a 24-hour cycle. We have also and will continue to do video inspection of the Big Dry Creek interceptor. One potential solution that we're looking at would be to consider the feasibility of recommissioning a decommissioned parallel line to that Big Dry Creek interceptor, which could offer some relief for some of the projects. As was pointed out by the map, that basin is very large. We are also working together as a group of departments to look at the projects that do not have yet a building permit issued. What are possible ways to continue with some of that work, and the language in the moratorium that you'll consider this evening addresses that. In fact, for those that would not have an increase to the demand on the Big Dry Creek interceptor, if it could be made to be that way, there may be solutions that are available. And finally, we are working to use our web page as a primary medium regarding any outcome of the moratorium that is before you this evening for decision, so that we would be able to provide timely information to residents, businesses, and to the developer community. I think that's all we have for you at this time. We're available for your questions.
Council, do you have questions of the staff, and based upon the presentation and the information you've been given? Ms. Pinter, do you want to start?
Sure, thank you. Thank you for taking so much time to prepare these questions. I know my colleagues have questions as well. You were talking about how, Matt, you're attempting some mitigation, you're pursuing mitigation, as many opportunities as possible, and working with cross departments to make sure that happens. Could you talk a little bit about when we might get updates in the future on if any of your theories for mitigation prove to be fruitful, such as, will we hear from you in 3 months or 6 months, or when will we know?
Most of the projections that we have on all of the projects that are either in, let's say, less than a building permit issuance, we have done estimated flows assigned to each of those, regardless of where they are in the development process. So that is a piece of information that will help inform the review. So that's one item. In terms of mitigations, as a result of that effort, we also know how much more flow is acceptable within what we call a risk profile. In other words, we have an obligation to our city and to this council to ensure that a sanitary sewer overflow does not occur. So the mitigations that we're talking about are just to help us manage within that risk profile, and then to be able to accept yet a limited number of additional projects that are in some stage of evaluation community development. The reason I mentioned the estimated flows, obviously that's critical for if the city were to give go-ahead to any of those projects and what their flows and impacts would be. As far as when and how often, we could provide updates as often as you would deem necessary. But certainly we want to take our time during, if you approve the contract in item 10F, we want to take our time to do the best homework we can during that pre-design, so that we are looking at a variety of possible development scenarios to determine what is or isn't possible within the funding that we project for that project.
There was a comment made during the public comment that the moratorium was going to prevent us from addressing this issue and taking it head on. And it seems like from your presentation that the opposite is true. How quickly do you think you're going to be able to get to work finding solutions?
Again, I think our intent is within a 6 to 9 month time frame, working with this consultant, HDR, who is very intimately familiar, as is our own staff, with this situation. I think we'll be able to evaluate a variety of possible development scenarios and come up with the best solution. And that's what we would bring back to you. And I think, as I indicated, I may not have assigned a date to it, but part of the rate recommendations that we brought to you a week ago included putting all of the construction funding that we would anticipate into the year 2020. Dave?
Mr. Downey, go ahead.
Let me add something to that. Max has already mentioned HDR being soon under contract to work on this. For what it's worth, Max says they've been working on this project for 6 years. I can tell you that as far back as the 1970s, HDR was at that time the prime engineering consultant for the city's utility department. They have a long history with this city, and they're probably, well, without a doubt, the most knowledgeable consulting firm on the city of Westminster's utility system. But what I really wanted to tell you was, in-house, we have a team headed by perhaps our 3 top engineers on city staff: Dave Losman from Community Development, Stephen Groders from Public Works and Utilities, and John Burke from Economic Development, who, you know, those men, and they're very, very busy men. This is the most important thing that they will be working on for the foreseeable future, and they all recognize that and acknowledge that. And they have at their disposal several other very knowledgeable staff people who will make this the top priority. They are meeting weekly, at least weekly, I know, and I'm getting weekly reports from that group. Be happy to share those with council. Some of them, could be some wild ideas, but if you want to hear even the wild ideas, we could do that on a weekly basis.
Well, I'm just excited to hear that you guys are working so diligently to find solutions. I think a persistent question that has come up, and you guys touched on it earlier, that who's in the queue now will be served on a first come first served basis. But what about the projects that aren't ready to get paperwork into City Hall before noon tomorrow? What do they need to wait the full period until we're able to lift the moratorium, or what options do they have to continue to get design review and get feedback and continue along doing their work so that they're ready when the capacity is ready in the infrastructure?
So I'll attempt to answer that, and others may want to chime in. So we were very careful in the selection of language for crafting the moratorium to leave out as many potential projects as we could. So, for example, did not cover residential projects for a homeowner wanting to come in and make a bathroom remodel, for example. We provided avenues for working with an applicant who might be doing a tenant finish. So we really limited it very narrowly to official development plans and their amendments and preliminary development plans and their amendments, so larger scale. with the knowledge that those projects don't tend to just pop up out of nowhere. They're extensive prep work that goes into all of that before we ever see them. Had a fairly good idea from staff communications of who fell into that pool, and did what we could over the course of the last week to reach out and communicate very clearly what the moratorium did and did not cover, to provide an opportunity for as many as possible to make applications for pre-application meetings before noon tomorrow. So that's a part of the answer. As far as those that are in the process, we'll work very diligently with them to try and help them move forward through the process expeditiously. But I think perhaps City Attorney would like to clarify where decisions were made to not just let that list go on into an extended period of time, why we felt the need to pause for the moment and evaluate the development applications we had in front of us first. So.
Sure. The other category of applications that would not be subjected to the moratorium are pre-application requests for each of the different applications that Ms. Grafton described. So if an applicant does, well, not yet have an ODP or PDP or an amendment of either of those, so long as they've had a pre-application request, they would not be subject to the terms of the moratorium. Also important to keep in mind that the moratorium is limited in scope in terms of the types of applications. It would be on new development applications that weren't already submitted as of a certain time. But it's also in scope geographically, only to those projects that would increase the flow into the Big Dry Creek interceptor. So if a project is proposed that doesn't increase the flow into the Big Dry Creek interceptor, it's not subjected to the moratorium. We wanted to provide for innovative solutions that might be proposed to ensure that those applications could be considered. They certainly can file an application if they aren't going to increase the flow into the Big Dry Creek interceptor. The other limited scope of the moratorium is the duration. The 12-month period is really designed to accomplish the study, which you've heard about. And the estimates are, I understand that the study might be a 9-month study, after which options are presented to council and evaluated and then selected for construction and funding. So funds would need to be appropriated, and we wanted to ensure that council had time to consider its options and appropriate the funds for the selected solution to this capacity constraint.
So in that interim, people can, developers or projects that are proposed at this point internally within their organization, but not necessarily ours, they can continue to seek feedback and chat with staff and economic development, but they wouldn't necessarily queue up till after the moratorium had been lifted, and then they would file and be queued up at that point.
I think that's as accurate as we can be at this time. So there's certainly no reason why staff wouldn't continue to provide information and customer service to the extent that we can answer those questions. I think we'll be mindful of not getting ahead in giving any sort of guarantee that at the end of that 12-month period we're going to be able to serve them. That's something that the study will need to determine. But yes, we would absolutely continue to engage in conversations and development discussions.
And if I could add to that, comprehensive plan amendment requests are not subjected to the moratorium. So someone who's developing a project and considering making a request for a comp plan amendment would not be subjected to the moratorium. They could continue to move through the process to see if the city would consider, and anyone could apply, they would be considered, but comp plan amendments are important to distinguish from new development applications, because there might be projects where comp plan amendments are required, and those could be received and processed.
If I may come back for a moment to Councilor Penner's question about economic development. As we highlighted in the map, There are a lot of areas of the city that are not impacted, that are not subject to the moratorium. And so I think we would view that also as an opportunity to try and address those development desires in other areas of the city to keep businesses and projects moving forward.
So my last question, and maybe Mr. Tripp, I'm not sure who's most qualified or in the best position to answer this, but would we have quarterly updates or monthly updates? So as we get information that we're able to, there's obviously quite a lot of people in the audience tonight. You're not normally all here. It's lovely to see you. And we've gotten a lot of emails. So people aren't always having to reach out to us. Is there going to be a way to systematically release that information to the public?
So let me talk to the staff a little bit about what they believe to be the best timing for that. I guess there's two important things I think I'd say. First of all, whenever we've got new information that gives us better information to report than we have at the moment, that will get reported. That will get reported to you. And the second thing is that these folks and their staffs have been and will continue to be in direct contact with the development community, and when we can provide feedback for them that would be helpful, when we need more information from them, we'll be in regular contact. So this is an iterative process from this point forward. It's the most important work we're doing to send the right messages of our commitment to this to all of our partners, and I can absolutely guarantee you that whatever means are possible for us, we will keep people updated and do whatever you'd like to do. I think a lot of what happens along the way here will be highly technical in nature, but I think we'll be looking specifically at anything we discover which changes the way our modeling might look and the impact it would have on a developer.
Thank you so much. Those are my questions for now.
Mr. Frankel, did you have another comment?
Oh, I would just add that my understanding is that the web page is being updated continuously, and that new information as it becomes available could also be posted to the city's web page.
Okay. You want to cue your mic? Thank you. Mr. Canberra?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to staff for the presentation. And I know you've spent a lot of time over the past few weeks on this issue. So can you please go back to the slide that had the timeline that started in 2012, 2018? So we had a presenter say that we have known as a city about this problem since 2012 and that we have done nothing to solve this issue. This was news to me. Could you please expand a little bit more on what we knew in 2012 and how did we come to learn? And can you, I know you talked about it a little bit, but could you please just expand a little bit more on that?
I think at that time frame, it's clear that we recognized and are aware that there were age and condition, in other words, the ability to meet its intended function as it is, as well as capacity issues that also emerged in the 2013 comp plan, which was also being worked at that time and published in 2013. So there are limited dollars available in a CIP program. The city made some wise choices at that time to put those wastewater dollars to their best use, and that was deemed to be in the Little Dry Creek Interceptor because its age and condition was in a worse state than the Big Dry Creek Interceptor. Mm-hmm. But it was recognized that both ultimately had capacity issues to meet a build-out condition. And when we say build-out, we should also remember build-out was projected to be 2040, 2045. We are moving far more rapidly in the Big Dry Creek wastewater basin than a 2040, 2045 build-out schedule. That is what I meant when I said just since the end of the economic downturn, we have increased the flow in that Big Dry Creek Interceptor by 40%. Mm-hmm. So we are arriving at what would have been projected to be a build-out condition much more rapidly than 2040 or 2045.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you for that clarification. Tonight we've heard from different developers, and I tried to write all the names, and Mr. Mayor, if I missed anybody, you have. So we heard from Mr. Byrne and his colleague with Berkeley Homes, Mr. Kearney. We heard from Mr. Bassbinder, and I'm sorry if that's not how you pronounce your last name, and Mr. McKay. They had a lot of concerns and uncertainty, which we completely understand, in regards to their projects. Could you please provide some clarification as to what is the status of their projects? You know, have they submitted, you know, what part of the process are they? You know, have they received a permit? Have they not? What can they expect, I guess, and how will the moratorium impact their projects?
Sure. I'll work from memory, and I'll keep checking out in the audience for Mr. Losman in case he signals me that I got it wrong.
And I know we had received, a couple of emails as well, which I can't remember if it's the same. So I don't know if you have those as well.
Okay, I'll try to remember them here.
Thank you.
So Mr. McKay's project and Mr. Vassbinder are talking about the what we commonly call the Church Ranch Senior Housing Project. Council might recall, quite some time ago, taking action on that project, and it's been delayed since that time that council took action. I think it was due to some kind of tax credits, as I recall hearing. So it is one of those projects that, you know, is not subject to the moratorium that would begin if council approves the ordinance tonight at noon tomorrow. Okay. It is in the system, you might say, but it certainly does not have a building permit. So it's one of many of those projects that are would be reviewed as for capacity as a building permit might be requested. Mr. Byrne and Mr. Willis are talking about a project that, and it involves Mr. Kearney also, talking about a residential project at the southwest corner of 104th and Sheridan that encompasses three different properties, the Holtzclaw property and the Amberwood property to the south of that. That project will require a comp plan amendment. It's currently designated at R 3.5, and I believe they would be requesting a comp plan amendment for R8. So it would have to go through that process. And again, yes, we've had a pre-application with that project, and it's in the system, but just again, same as the last one, no building permit issued, obviously. And then I believe, I'm speculating here just from previous conversations I've had with Mr. Kearney, he has other properties also that he's currently marketing that he's concerned about at both the northwest and northeast corners of 104th and Sheridan, and probably other properties. Mr. Kearney still represents several undeveloped properties in the city. And I believe we have not had any pre-application request for the northeast, and is that correct, Dave? That is correct. No pre-application request for either of those properties at the northwest or northeast corner of 104th and Sheridan.
Thank you, Mr. Downey. one issue that was brought up by one of the gentlemen was in regards to how will we be able to cover the cost to solve this problem. I know we've had some conversations around this. Could you please expand on how do we plan on covering the cost to solve this problem, since we want to accelerate the process?
That was in the recommendations that we presented to council a week ago, and it has to consider two things. Number one, as an enterprise fund, the funding for utility projects either comes from tap fees or from rates paid by our customers. So in order to accelerate what was a lengthy funding profile between the years 2019 to 2023 projected, and to move that forward, the rate recommendations that we presented to you last week increased the recommended rates on the sewer of the utility bill to accommodate a part of that, and as well, we anticipate and we discussed with you the idea of using a significant amount of debt issuance in 2019 on both the water and the wastewater side to be able to fund what is the profile that we're now pursuing, which would be pre-design immediately, followed by design, and then by construction. Does that answer, ma'am?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Kirschbaum. That answers my question. And the plan that we currently have to put into place, it's a plan that, and I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, the financial plan that we're going to have to put into place is one that we would have had to put but at a later date, but we're accelerating it in order to cover this cost.
Absolutely. No matter what, that this work for the portion of the Big Dry Creek Interceptor is absolutely necessary, would have occurred a little bit later. All we're doing essentially is pulling that whole funding profile forward to make it happen sooner, but it's absolutely necessary.
Okay, thank you very much.
Counselor, I want to add just a little bit to that. You didn't ask about the other steps in the process here, but it's germane here because we've had multiple meetings in the last few weeks in the study session room where there aren't as many people in attendance. So I want to mention something because we put in front of council the range of things that have to get done here to expedite. Part of it is in a very aggressive profile of fees. And they've seen those, and to this point have all nodded their heads that they would be willing to take that on and support those kind of increases, and they're significant. Those are not always easy to do, and so we feel confident that we've had that support. But in addition to that, we've talked to them about the other aspects of expediting this process, and that is land acquisition. They recently authorized a contract for services that was non-competitive, but we felt was in the best interest of the program and the best vendor. We've had the support we need. If we need more, we'll ask for it. And because our hope is to cut time, to spend wisely, to get the work done, and to have the work that gets done serve more than we're even thinking about today through our own profiling and our work. And the best minds are on this. I would say that we've had tremendous response from the development community and their attitude and their cooperative spirit in working through this. I think many have seen this sort of thing in an extremely busy cycle, and we've had political courage to this point. So I'm not sure what else we can do, but if we find something else, we'll bring it back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Tripp. I think it was Mr. Byrne who said that that he didn't like the word moratorium, which I agree, because it sounds you're essentially saying we're closed for business. But that's not my understanding. I know, and I want you to expand a little bit more on this, is and just even from talking about some of the projects that different developers have brought here tonight, is we have quite a few projects that are going through the permit process, that are in the review process, that will move forward. So the fact that we might support or we might move forward with doing a moratorium does not mean we're closed for business. It just means we want to be good partners. We want to make sure that we're serving our residents well. And so we need time to evaluate things so we can solve this. And simultaneously, we're going to have projects happening. So can you clarify on that? Because I'm a big concern, like Mr. Brown, moratorium might signal to community and to our developing community that we're closed for business.
Sure, I'll just jump in on that one.
You scared me there for a second.
Trying to decide the best to answer it. So, as I'm sure council can imagine, the word moratorium is not anything any economic development department wants to put out there. So, does not come lightly. Came with a great deal of discussion with legal counsel on the necessity of providing clear and definitive lines and equity among development applications. And so to your point about not wanting to send a message of being closed for business, but rather that we are going to take the time necessary to make a very thoughtful evaluation about how we move forward. And that's exactly what moratoriums are intended to do. Not to stop things, but to provide that time to really make a careful and thoughtful study of the situation so that we can move forward with clarity and direction for those development applicants. I don't know if you...
The only other small sentence I'd add to Jenny's explanation is also included in the summary statement of tonight's agenda memo, the third bullet in the summary section. I'll just read that one line because I think it helps add clarity to that point. That additional engineering analysis indicates that the Big Dry Creek Interceptor Sewer does not have sufficient capacity to serve all the development applications that the city has currently received. So the idea of a moratorium would help us fairly evaluate and best use the capacity, the small capacity that remains within that risk profile that I discussed earlier, before we get into a situation where we're concerned, where we would be concerned about a sanitary sewer overflow.
Okay, thank you. And those are all the questions I have, Mr. Mayor.
Other members of council have a question on this item. Mr. DeMont.
Being one of the new counselors since November, I have some historical questions that I'm trying to understand. So you said 40% increase since 2008. I'm curious, do we know how much flow increase has been since 2012, when we really were looking at the fact that we knew that there were those choke points and work ahead of us?
Yeah, I used the period of time since the end of the economic downturn because that was really the beginning of the work that culminated in this report that I referenced in 2012. So I think the best answer that I can provide to that is we had both actual flows that were known at that time, plus all development that was in some way in the pipeline to help describe our future condition. So it's a combination of what it was and what could be coming through development.
Okay. My next question really is around the timeline. And I mean, you've talked in length about timeline of what you think it's going to do the study. And I guess more than anything, I want to state my desire that we shrink that if possible. And I don't know if there's monies that could be diverted or whatever it takes to do this, because I think it's important. I do think it's important to do it right, but I also think it's important that we do it as quickly as possible. You kind of spoke to it, but I had it written down here that I wanted to ask. And, you have mentioned that, that is the ultimate goal. One of the other questions that I had is, I believe, more for the city manager. And I'm curious, this has kind of popped up and now it's, an emergency and we all understand the weight of it. At what point, did this really start bubbling up to you where we realize that we really have a problem, that we're going to be up against something like this? And my question comes from concern of, I don't like the feeling of having to do things in an emergency fashion. I understand where we are and why we're doing it at this point, but how did we get to that point, and could it have been avoided?
The short answer to could this situation at this moment have been avoided, in my estimation, is no. I would say it this way: we were modeling in 12 and 15, and we're seeing increases in flow, but we were within a risk profile that, knowing what was coming down the chute at that time, did not feel a need to do something immediate as we do today. The 2018 last review, where one of our engineers not only looked at the building permits that have been issued, but looked at the items that were in pre-application, which you never know whether those are even going to be built, but beyond that, looked at a profile of a whole number of projects we knew were coming down the chute, that we'd had conversations with, maybe that we were interested in or promoting, and added all those up. And so really went beyond even the modeling and profile, in my estimation, you'd normally see, and at that time said, I've got a concern. And we looked at it, didn't overreact to it, consulted internally. We actually started to expedite some things at that time. And we actually did some things in part of this system that were more immediate, right? So in the last few weeks to few months, we've gotten our heads around this and decided that in consultation with the city attorney that it was time to take this step and make this recommendation to you for a lot of reasons, some of which I'll leave it to him to explain. But I would tell you one of the reasons is to be really transparent about where this is, and to not ever be accused or not ever have anybody say that we had a problem and didn't ring the bell. We needed to do that, not only just for our residents of the city to protect us from the SSO, the sewer discharge, but also to our developers and our landowners, to let them know that, we're sitting here understanding that we're out of sewer capacity if we don't move quickly, and we know it's going to take a while to build it. So I think in a lot of ways to not do what we've done would have been irresponsible. And at the back end of it, and we talk about this internally, the most important thing for us is that when we get all done with this, that everybody can understand and can believe and continue to have confidence in the city that we're honest about these things when they come forward, and we work hard to try to solve them, but at the same time don't share in the truth about the situation. So I don't know, Counselor, if that helps or not, but I can tell you that we wouldn't be sitting, if 6 months ago it was our view to have, for that to be the time to talk about it and bring it to you, you'd have heard it then. And I'd asked Max and Dave and Jenny to weigh in. Is there anything that I've said that you're uncomfortable with or you want to expand on?
I agree with what Mr. Tripp said, but I will add to that I could have done personally a better job a year ago being louder and clearer about this situation. I don't think it would have changed the course of action in terms of what would have been needed to solve the problem, because we would have the same problem then as we do now. That money was not available. It was not in a CIP program. It was projected for a later year. The growth that has occurred in this basin, and I heard mention earlier about being centered around the promenade. It's not just the promenade. It's 2/3 of our city. It's everything from approximately 128th Avenue down to 92nd Avenue. They all contribute. So it's not one focus area. It's the totality of all the development that has occurred in that time frame. But you're asking, could I have done a better job? Yes.
Well, I appreciate you being transparent with that, because I think one of the things for both the council and the staff is looking forward, what lessons have we learned and how could we do better in the future? So I really appreciate your statement. The last thing that I wanted to mention, and it's kind of a question/statement, the city manager mentioned about the rate increase, which you did bring forward to us, and we talked about what that would do for us. I would say that I was the one who had some questions about it still and haven't pledged my full support. And part of that was around the fact that with the utility fund, which you alluded to, we can take up to 10% from the general fund. And so I still had questions around that and what level of money that is. And we did talk that same night about maybe that not being available. But I wanted to at least put it on the record that that's something I'm still weighing so that everybody's clear about where the whole council is. And those are my questions.
Councilor, if I could maybe respond to that, I appreciate that comment a lot because, those are there are those kinds of options. And this, our clean drinking water and safely managing our effluent are very, very important to us, right? So I don't think we'd hesitate necessarily to use general fund money if that was going to help us and we needed it. It would help us and we need it, but there's another issue here too. We presented to you last week a financial sustainability study, and we talked about infrastructure throughout the city organization, streets and bridges and municipal buildings, and all of our other kinds of fixtures in our city, which we also have significant issues with, and their only source of revenue is that general fund. So I think that we're going to continue to work on that, and if there's a way to do some of that in the shorter term and have that support, we will certainly look at it. But I can guarantee you that the fix of this immediate problem and to get us out of this moratorium and to move forward at this point is not a matter of money. It's not, that is important to us that we get these fees approved, but it isn't just that as much as it is really moving expeditiously and getting this work done as quickly as we can, and then finding maybe some creative solutions that buy us a little more time.
I appreciate that, Mr. Tripp. The last thing that I would say about that is my view of government really is those core services, which I make no hesitation of sharing with both the council and the staff. And so the only reason I bring it up is I always want to make sure that as we go down this path, that the things that we are paying for, that basically we're not dropping the ball because we have too many balls in the air, especially when it comes to our core services. So, it's always going to be asked for me, even when I know the answer is yes, because it doesn't hurt to ask a second time and make sure that we're thoughtfully thinking through it. So, I am comfortable saying that I'm going to support this reluctantly. At great pains. I know none of us are happy about the position we're in, but I do think it's the right thing to do. So I appreciate it.
Other comments or questions by council before we move on? Ms. Bird?
So I just had a question. I don't know if we're far enough along in this process to know, but going through the review that we plan, or that the city is recommending if we are to approve the moratorium tonight, how will we determine capacity? What is the capacity that we're going to determine is ideal? So this is 2/3 of our city right now, and I guess some of the things that I think about are as the metro area grows, growth happens in our city as well. And one of the options that I know we've discussed when you look at the whole city has been densification. So, for example, 10 years ago, what we thought build-out was going to be is different than what we think about build-out being today, just in terms of not having as spread out population that now people are building up and we're densifying. So how will we determine, if you can answer that, what the appropriate capacity is going to be, so that when we fix this, that we fix it for as long as we can?
I'd like to repeat something that we have put in numerous papers to you as well as presentations. When we did an evaluation hand in hand during the development of the 2013 comp plan, which is really the core source document that we all work from. From that time, Public Works and Utilities estimated that it would take approximately $1 billion in improvements, not doing the repair and restoration to the existing infrastructure, but $1 billion in new works that would be needed to support the ultimate build-out vision of, say, 2040, 2045. So there's always been a very steep hill to climb to figure out how we were going to get to that end date. So I think the best way for me to answer that is, I earlier said, without a doubt, this project is absolutely necessary. Beyond that, really, we need to take a hard evaluation of that list of $1 billion worth of improvements, which includes everything from, I'll say, the spectrum of the utility, from the raw water and its acquisition through treatment, storage, distribution, wastewater collection, wastewater treatment to wastewater effluent. They all have both age and condition and capacity issues. So it would be irresponsible for me to sit here today and tell you we do this project and all problems are solved. We need to do this project and put a good list of projects in front of you as part of that comp plan that includes the specific projects that are needed across what we call the 15 utility areas, their cost and their time to complete in order to meet those build-out targets. There is other work to be done. This is not the only project of concern. There is other improvements that need to be done to support a continually growing city. And I do realize there are parcels of land that are not yet developed. There are parcels of land that will be redeveloped. All of that is part of that 2013 comp plan that was evaluated, in which we determined $1 billion of work needs to be done to make it happen.
Add a little bit to that, sort of larger cross-departmental perspective. So, as council knows, we're in the middle of going through an update to the comprehensive plan. And while it is true that in the past there was a desire to marry those resources to the comprehensive plan, probably not in so comprehensive a way as we're undertaking now. So the team that is working with the consultants to evaluate comprehensive plan changes really does include representation from across all of the development departments. We have a city that has a very high percentage of it zoned as PUD, which allows for a lot of flexibility. And we have currently a comprehensive plan that also allows for a lot of flexibility. So while the intentions there were good, it does make for a difficult situation to estimate resource demands. And so we have an opportunity now in this iteration of the comp plan to be much more specific and tailored to how we want the city to grow, where we want to drive that density and achieve the long-term vision.
That's great. Thank you for that. I wanted to ask another question, and I am not an urban planner, but I think a great point was raised that I wanted to clarify this question. The gentleman who's the president of Berkeley Homes asked this about why do we have to stop the PDP and the ODP review process through the moratorium? Why can't applications that are submitted continue through that process, and we don't have to issue a building permit, which would obligate our sewer system, but you could at least allow projects to continue through the approval process, so once we did have capacity, people would be teed up and ready to go at that time.
If I may respond.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the occurrences that led to the moratorium development was a receipt of a volume of applications which, if developed, exceeded the city's ability to serve. So we already have more applications, as I understand it, than capacity. If there's no moratorium, and the code right now compels staff to continue to accept new applications, staff's resources will be allocated in a way to reviewing proposed applications which cannot be approved. And when they are denied, the burden then becomes the appeal hearings, which would then, and potentially the appeals beyond council to the courts. So rather than allocating staff resources in that manner, the staff recommendation tonight is to consider adopting the moratorium so that staff can focus on solutions relative to the capacity constraints, rather than continuing to accept applications which cannot be approved on our code.
That makes sense. Okay, that's helpful to me. Can you also talk a little bit about development and property owners coming to the city with, I've heard this question asked outside in some of the emails that we've received. If people are going to be, hiring their own engineers, for example, and they come up with good ideas, can those partners still collaborate with the city and share those ideas? What happens for people who want to propose one-off solutions, for example? How does that, what happens with that? I think I know the answer to that, but because the question I've seen it posed, I feel compelled to ask. So we have that information out there.
If I could just, the threshold question for the innovative application, which does not increase demand on our sewer, is that it's not subject to the moratorium. So if an application comes in for new development, which does not increase demand on the Big Dry Creek interceptor, staff accepts that application and reviews it.
Is there more to that? Right. So I can provide some examples that may help to put some context around that. So, for example, a developer that has a larger property, multiple tenants, for example, wants to provide or wants to build a new store, let's just say. If we could work with them to find a solution where they reduced their water and, well, I won't say water, but reduce their sewer demand throughout the development and could potentially something new in without changing any demand. They exchange all their toilets for ultra-high flow fixtures, for example. So it's a net neutral impact. That would be an opportunity we could work with them on.
I see. Nope, that makes perfect sense. And then lastly, another question I had seen, is there, what is the value and the contemplated role you expect a third-party evaluator to have? So I know later on in our meeting we'll be looking at